Now, how can you tell when somebody has joined us? Is it the stripe along the bottom?
There goes the participants. Right, well, welcome everyone. I'm Paul Alexander, the Missioner for Development and Financial Stewardship here at the Episcopal Church in Colorado, and it's wonderful to have you with us today as we talk about how to use technology to facilitate giving.
And I'm Tracy Mechy. I'm the coordinator for development and stewardship, so I work closely with Paul. I'm also a parishioner at St. Gabriel the Archangel and a member of the vestry there as well.
And it's great to have with us Dennis Green, who is the CEO and president of Church Development. He's an amazing resource. We've been working with him on this series. He's got, as you can see, over 30 years of experience in this field of church development and stewardship. He's written a great book called The Stewardship System, which many parishes around the diocese use. And he's also currently working with the whole Episcopal Diocese in Iowa, working on a major capital campaign for the diocese and each of the parishes there. So he comes with a wealth of information, and we're just blessed to have him as part of our group today.
Well, thanks, Paul. It's great to be here. Church development has been around for, seems like forever. I'm feeling old, but this is the one circumstance where being a senior citizen really helps. All that life experience. So we've run more than 200 capital campaigns in parishes around the country and raised several $100 million. And that's really our kind of our laboratory for testing our stewardship principles. So we'll share some of those with you today, but I will be at your service, Paul and Tracy, as we proceed. I will follow your directions. So back over to you.
And we really recommend going to the website, which is, I think, churchdevelopment.com, correct? And just, peruse. There's so many great resources there. Just so you know that we really hope that you'll post your questions and any comments that you might have. There's a little button probably at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. If you click on that, you can type in questions, you can type in comments, or just share your own experience. And we'll be keeping an eye out for those and reading those as we go through this process.
So our agenda today is really to start off with a picture of giving in the United States. We'll share some statistics with you. We also have some statistics that are a little closer to home here in the Diocese of Colorado. We'll talk about considerations, things you need to take into account if you're looking at expanding your giving options to your congregations. And we'll look in detail at what those modern giving options are. And when we say modern giving, these are things that are readily available to us today. They're easy to implement, and they require a very low learning curve. And then we'll talk about how you can get started right now with expanding how you offer giving options in your churches, and how our office here at the diocese can support you. Before we get into the meat of it, I'd like to start off with a prayer. And given our theme today, I would like it to be the doxology. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above, ye heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Amen.
All right, Dennis, over to you.
Okay, giving statistics. Now, my wife reminds me that not everybody shares my enthusiasm, which I think has become code word for I can be boring pretty quickly, but I love looking at the big picture. So if you look at, in total, all nonprofit organizations last year, about $390 billion. This is a huge industry, and it is studied by a bevy of professionals. Now, one of the things they discovered is about a third of all those donations went to us in the church world. Now, unfortunately, it is a dramatic decline from recent history. 1990 was not that long ago. So you can see we have contracted not quite by half, but certainly by 40%. This is bad news for us. We in the church world have really got to increase our professionalism in the stewardship world. Now, we know that stewardship is not the same as fundraising. Stewardship is based on 1 Peter 4:10, which I will paraphrase. God has blessed us all with something. So we've got to figure out what that is, and we've got to be a conduit for God's blessings. Now, we are not very good at communicating that message nor motivating our people to give. So what do? This workshop is meant to give to you the latest technology to make your job in raising funds a little bit easier. Now, the next two bullets in the statistics, 72% of donations, that really should say cash donations, are made by individuals. 8% is by bequest. Those are from individuals. So together, it's 80%. Now, it's very interesting. This $20, I'd like you to memorize that. The $20 gift seems to be a threshold for easy gifts. That is an average, or rather a median that most people adhere to. The average person who gives money away gives 1.6% of their income. Put that into the Episcopalian world, the average Episcopalian gives 2.2% of their income to their church. Most of us give to 5 different charities, with the bulk of that going to our church. So perhaps half would go to our church, and we'd have 4 more different charities that we support. Fortunately, we are in a growth industry. Only 5% of our people actually tithe, so we have room to grow. The research on generosity says the more generous a person is, the happier they are, the healthier they are, and they subjectively report a better relationship with God. So we want to facilitate a better relationship with God, so we need to get better at stewardship. All right, now let me pause and turn it back over to Tracy to talk about giving in Colorado, in the Episcopal Diocese.
Actually, I'm going to steal that from Tracy.
Okay.
So,
okay. All right.
if you look at the church here in Colorado, as we look at our statistics, if you look at average Sunday attendance, about 67% of those actually pledge. So we're still missing about 30%, 33% of our average Sunday attendance that still do not pledge. So we want to figure out how to get them to do that. If you look at the pledge combination, about 80% of our revenues as far as donations come through pledges, and the remaining 20% through the Sunday plate. If you look at the plate and pledge, that's still only about 80% of the average revenue in each of our churches. So where does the other 20% come? Well, 5% comes from special outreach appeals. It might be, for example, to Project Haiti or to the local soup kitchen. And a lot of churches, some will build it into their budgets, but other will do a special appeal. And about 5% of those special appeals, are for those kinds of outreach projects. The remaining then 15%, some of that comes from church investments, or for just fee for service, the kind of rentals, for example, of church facilities to preschools or church, other community activities. So that's where our sort of revenue picture looks like in Colorado. Additionally, in the survey that we did, and we asked about, kind of the technology use, we found that 80% of the churches across the diocese use electronic fund transfer. That's a very popular way of collecting pledges on a regular basis. But only 50% of our churches actually have a giving option on their website. So we certainly would love to increase that. It's a very clear, obvious way that you can increase donations. So just being sure to have that on the website. And then the other interesting thing is we'll see there's about 10% that do text to give options, and a couple of churches that actually have dip jars and use them in the congregation. So bottom line is we're looking at, I think the constant question that you want to ask as we're looking through this is, who are we trying to reach, and how can we possibly make it easier for them to give spontaneously?
Those are the good questions to be asking. Now, in my job, we do about a dozen feasibility studies every year before capital campaigns, which means I sit down and I interview 30 members of a congregation and ask them lots of questions about giving to their church. And people are spectacularly, brutally honest. They give me the facts. They don't pull any punches. And so the amount of people I've interviewed over the past 30 years is just astronomical. So I have this frontline view about people's comfort with giving. And they tell me the good stuff and the bad stuff. But among the good things that they tell me is that they like electronic fund transfer giving. They're very comfortable. The closer a person is to being at the center of your church, the more comfortable they are. So therefore, what should we do? We should do more of this. About a third of you people will state right up front, I would like to shift all of my giving and bill paying for that matter to automatic recurring giving. Now, almost 80% of your folks want to do virtually everything electronically on their device. They don't carry cash, nor do they have a checkbook that they would use with any regularity. So we've got to accommodate their preferences. Now there's this new thing, that third bullet, the kiosk. This is a new, unusual thing that has met with a wonderful embrace, particularly if you have a lot of visitors and if you've got younger folks. A kiosk is just basically an iPad bolted to a podium so it can't get stolen very easily, where you swipe, you hit a couple of buttons, and you have made your gift. Usually it is by the door, and I would only see it as I am walking out. This is preferred by young adults who are generally just returning to church as they get married and start a family. 30% of your folks are very comfortable, under the age of 45. They're very comfortable with text to give, so we have got to start that absolutely right now. Phone call solicitation, not such a popular thing. In the old days, it used to be the preferred method of assertive follow-up. Now we should really be very prudent on how we use that. Now this last bullet is interesting. 43% like the plate, pardon me. However, the plate still only represents, cash only represents about 10% or less of your giving. So don't count on that being much in the future. That will further shrink. Now in our next slide, the generational differences really begin to give you an insight. Now the key term here, right there in the middle, it says spur of the moment. So are we as a church institutionally ready to facilitate that spur of the moment, that spontaneous gift? So you look at the dark blue, the medium blue, and the light green. Among the millennials, to meet their need, to meet 88% of their frequency needs for spontaneous giving, we have got to have something like a kiosk or a dip jar or a text to give. Now, the generalization I draw out of looking at a chart like this is the older people get, the more organized they are and more deliberate in their giving. Well, I can count on my core, but at some point, the older generations will, to use my favorite euphemism, matriculate to the next world. So we've got to prepare that younger generation. And if we don't have the technology available to accommodate their lack of prior planning, they don't carry cash, they don't have a checkbook, we are going to lose their donations, but more importantly, we're going to lose that opportunity to connect with them. That's the big thing. Now, on the next slide, you've got this target, this bullet-shaped graphic. Gallup Polling did this instrument. They've created this instrument, the ME25, to examine our typical congregations. And what they've discovered is only about 15% of our folks are deeply involved. Now, one way you can understand that easily is what percent of your people are interested in serving on a standing committee? That's only about 15%. That means 85% do not have that level of commitment. So about 50% are moderate and 35% are on that outer fringe. We call them CEOs, Christmas and Easter only, or Creasters, Christmas and Easter folks. So we have got to bend and flex to engage and invite them into the process so that they're shareholders and not spectators. Now, this next slide, slide 14, is to me just absolutely a critical insight. So in the 10 years before I started working just with churches, so from 82 to 92, I worked with all kinds of nonprofit organizations. They spend 24% of their budget on fundraising. Now let's compare that to the average church, where we spend 1% or less on revenue generation. The difference is dramatic. Remember going back to that pie chart about where do donated dollars go? Fundraising is the lifeblood for a nonprofit organization, so they are going to spend money and hire professionals and do the best possible job. They're going to spend the right amount of money on that. Now, if you flip the equation around and rather than looking at a percentage, you talk about return on investment, the way they think about it is they have to spend $1 in order to raise 4. So the return on investment is really 400%. They raise $4 for every 1 that we spend. Now in the church world, we even get a better return on investment. We get $50 for every 1 that we spend. However, in my professional career, I have a great deal of difficulty getting anyone to spend $1 ever. That's my life challenge. Now, I do know in our capital campaign work, our history as a company, we raise $25 for every $1 that we are paid for a fee to be a capital campaign consultant. So it's when you have a deliberate effort, it works. If it's deliberate and it's organized and systematic and based on history, then we know that it works. Now we're going to shift gear and give you some real deliberate tools on what you can do starting today. And by today, slide 36 and 37 are going to be exactly what you need to do today. But let me pause and ask for questions.
Paul, we did have one question from James, okay. And I think he wanted to understand, when you say tithe, is that 10% of income? Is it 10% of income and wealth? Net income after taxes? What do we mean by tithe in today's world?
Well, that's really good, and that's a good question. And I would encourage you to Google Barna, George Barna. He is a church researcher, and of course, part of the church world is the giving side. And he is one of my favorite researchers, and he has a book, How to Increase Giving in Your Church. Now, his definition is pre-tax, and only 5% of the population tithe 10% of their pre-tax income. Now, certainly that is skewed in one direction, but I like looking at statistics and I like the big picture. And we can look at the big picture really easily. We see at the bottom end, the average Catholic gives 1.2%, an Episcopalian gives 2.2%, a Baptist gives 2.4%, a Seventh-day Adventist person would give 7%. There is no denomination that achieves a 10% norm in their giving. So all of us have got a lot of room to grow. That's a good question. Thank you, Paul. Anything else we should tackle right now?
No, I think that's it. I think we're ready to talk about those strategies you've been mentioning.
Okay. All right. Let's shift over to giving strategies. I love this cartoon. It says, basically, we're looking for an innovative pastor with a fresh vision who will inspire our church to remain exactly the same. That's us, okay? We're the frozen chosen. So we've got to break out of that and do something new and different. So I've kind of grouped these together: traditional, newer, modern, and cutting edge. And on the next page, you see traditional. Now, believe it or not, I'm working with a church right now that doesn't even ask for people's email addresses. Can you believe that? I asked, well, can we email everybody? And my person said, well, we don't have people's. Let me do some digging. Let me see if I got some email address. I said, holy moly, how do you conduct any activities at all? So maybe we should have another category and call it Cro-Magnon, okay? Or prehistoric. There are churches out there like that. So we're really going to be looking at where the green arrow is, okay? We're traditional. We hope you're above and beyond that. We hope, we know the majority of churches in Episcopal churches in Colorado do have electronic fund transfer. We're going to be looking at modern, so between new and cutting edge. I am enamored with technology, and I want to do everything. I want to do kiosk, dip, tap, RFID. I want to do all that stuff with everybody immediately because it's guaranteed to get you more money. Now, on the next slide, modern giving, we will call this a portfolio. I would like you to do all of these things, and I would like you to do them today, okay? I know you don't have it in your budget, but I would like you to, number one, form a stewardship committee and then find money, even if it's people in the stewardship committee giving money to start creating some of these resources. You probably have EFT, but you probably don't have anything else. So rather than me just push, the next slide, which is titled Considerations, this is where we should begin. If we're prudent servant leaders, we should really ask your people, what would you like? Now, in the old days, I used to be worried about asking for people's opinion, but since the advent of SurveyMonkey, which is basically free and quick, I would ask everybody 4 times per year for their input on a variety of subjects. And one of them, your next could be a survey about electronic giving options. Ask them what they would like. We want to meet them where they are. Now, on the next slide, online giving, in parentheses, your website, everybody's got to have an easy link to an online giving portal. So the user experience matches the experience we've had when we've ever purchased anything online. You set up an account, and it's visible and easy to everyone. You don't have to download an app, although I love apps, okay? But you don't have to do that if you would just like to go there. So this is good for your elderly folks who are in between tech users. Now let me ask Tracy on our next slide if she can just show us Christ Church Denver, and we consider this a champion. These guys are awesome. They have this set up. Tracy, would you mind talking about the next slide in Christ Church Denver?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a lot of fun this past week going through different church websites to see how they handle or present giving options on their websites. And in our survey, we found out that about 50% of our churches are using or offering online giving through their website. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples. This first one is Christ Church Denver, and these are just screenshots, so I can't navigate through them. But right on their homepage, these are the menu options that you see on the top. And one of those, very prominent, is how to give. You click that and it takes you to this page that you see in front of you where you can set up to give a one-time gift, which is the Give to Christ Church button, or you can do a recurring gift setup, which allows individuals to pay their pledge or maybe make capital campaign regular donations. And then as you continue down, they also talk about how you can give through a mobile app. So we like this. This next one is Trinity Greeley. Again, on their homepage, giving is one of the main menu choices. You click it, it takes you to this page here. They give you a little instruction sheet on how to do online giving, and then there's a link that takes you to the portal that looks like this. And I like this one a lot. It's pretty sophisticated. You can kind of do a quick and dirty one-time gift, or you can set up an account that allows you to do recurring gifts or multiple one-time donations whenever you want. You can also log back in and update your account information. This is Good Shepherd Centennial, and I like this one because it has another dimension. Again, on the homepage it says donate, so I clicked that. It took me here. Again, you can make a one-time donation, recurring donations, but you can also submit your pledge card online, which I think is a great option for people who are used to this world of doing things online. It also makes sure that it's available year-round, and they have a very lovely pledge card that looks like this. That's the top. and then the bottom there. So just a few websites for you to think about as you consider adding something like this to your own website. And back to you, Dennis.
Well, thank you. One of the wonderful things I've discovered is that everyone will share all of their resources with you. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to call Paul or Tracy or me, and don't hesitate to contact one of these churches as well. Now, my standard procedure for my 30 plus years in this business is I make many donations on websites like we just covered, and then they educate me. Like if you would really like to be educated by a first-class fundraising organization, go to Notre Dame University's website, give them $5 electronically, and then check the box that you're interested in remembering them in your will. They will come to visit you. They'll buy you lunch once a month for the rest of your life. So don't be shy about studying success. Okay, next slide is the online giving costs. And I think a real easy way to think of this is it is very similar to the transactional cost of a Visa. That is a very good gross generalization. Should that be a barrier? No. Generally, if you don't capture a gift using one of these methods, you're not going to get the gift. So if you have a $20 gift, 3% of that $20 is going to be a cost. 97% will be a net benefit to your church. So it is a very profitable endeavor. All right, next slide is about text to give. There are two methods, the modern and the old. The original one is you could send a text with an amount and it would be added to your phone bill. The new way is send a text with a dollar amount and then later on they send you back contact information in which you can fill out your credit card or debit card information. Either one of these can be done instantaneously. So you could put something in your Sunday bulletin. If the youth have got a trip coming up or a special event, you could text to give 20 or 50 or whatever you amount right now. And it is in motion. So don't let that slow you down. This is a good option for your in-between folks who are not yet comfortable with a kiosk or other ways of giving. The text to give costs, it's very modest. You have two different kind of text cost options, but neither one is very expensive. Now let's shift to what I think the most exciting new innovation is this giving kiosks and dip jars. Now you see that in the center of the slide on the right. That is a giving kiosk. And it is really nothing more than an iPad with a swipe slot. If you are in a ski town in Colorado, like Pagosa Springs, I would go visit my mom and my sister twice a year in Pagosa Springs. We'd go camping in the summer and skiing at Thanksgiving. If that was there, I would have used it. I would have swiped, I would have punched in my number, and I would have made a donation every single time. It's a very handy, easy thing to use. This one that you're looking at right here costs $1,400 to set it up, and it has a modest monthly charge. But $1,400 is still quite an expensive device. Now, when I was in the cathedral in San Francisco, they had one of these, and I noted that it was not visible as you entered the church. It was only visible on your way out. And on my way out, I saw it. I thought, well, of course I should give. And I used it. Now, the most exciting is that unit on the bottom. The dip jar, that's kind of a generic term. You see this one is called the Give Plus Sidekick. That's a bad name. That's too long a name. But it's really easy to use because literally it is a 2-second activity to dip your credit card or debit card in there, and it is preset with an amount. This one can be set for $10 or $20 or $50 or $100. But remember my reference in statistics earlier, $20 was this national norm. So that's what I would recommend you set it at. Now on the next slide, you can see with some detail about giving kiosk costs. It can be expensive. However, is it worth it? Absolutely. If you don't have it, then you're missing donations. Tracy and Paul are sitting in a room that is adjacent to the cathedral. Certainly every cathedral should have one of these for all of us who visit. And I think any church that has any visitors or any church that has a contingency of people who don't carry cash nor checks should have both of these items. All right, now let's shift.
We were very interested in purchasing some gift jars that we could have in our lending library here at the diocese and allow churches to use and try out. The ones that we were looking at were the sidekicks that were in the previous slide, and they were about $375 plus the monthly transaction cost. So they were a little higher. There is an issue with them right now. So if you're hoping to run out and order one of these right away, they'll probably tell you that they've got a couple more months of development work to just ensure that the security is what they want it to be. So they're on hold for a short period of time. Just wanted to add that.
Right, so they're working on it, but boy, when that comes off, I'm sure Tracy and Paul will tell you. And immediately go out just the minute you see it's ready and get one. Now, the next slide is about mobile apps. Please get one ASAP, please. This is the place that can be on your people's device, on their phone, where they can, at a tap, they can find out the news, the update, what's going on at church, a directory, and they can give. They could make a pledge, they could set up recurring giving, or they could make a spontaneous one-time on top of everything gift. So it's a little bit of effort to set it up and create it, but now, you know, how many apps do you have on your phone now? For some of us, the church is the center of our lives, and to have an app is the absolute right thing for you to do, and I would ask you to do it just ASAP. Okay, on the next one. Creating a mobile app, it could be as little as $100 a month. It could be $300 a month. Tracy and Paul, have you found that my $200 a month is a cost that one would expect?
For the mobile app, I think it's a little less.
Yeah.
So the mobile app is really just the transaction fee. So there's no device cost or hardware costs associated with it. So it's, I don't even think, because we recently purchased one here at the diocese, and it was just a matter of setting it up, and they really are earning their money with the per transaction fee, and then the other amount goes to the credit card company.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now on the next slide, online mobile desk and kiosk vendors. So there are a handful, and the place that I would begin as you look for this is, who is your current donation tracking software provider? That is your place to begin. Contact them and ask them, what resources can you give us so that giving is coordinated with our current donation tracking software. We want to be able to give people credit at the end of the year, and please don't make us do double duty. So we don't want these to be two separate operating systems. We want those to be integrated and functional to serve our members better. So here are listed several possible vendors. If you would like some additional help on this, on our next slide, Paul and Tracy, I will turn it over to you. You're very kind to offer all this help to all your churches.
So we really want to be of service to everyone in the diocese, and as you can see, there's a lot of things that we're going to make available to you. As soon as we get those gift jars out, those will be available for lending, for trying out for a month or two, and then if you decide that you really like one, you can purchase your own. But we recognize that there are some upfront costs, and we've taken care of those for you so you can really test these. So, for example, we recently purchased 2 giving kiosks. You'll see them at the convention here at the end of October. And then after October, we really want to get them around the diocese. So if you would like to try out a kiosk, just call Tracy or me or email us, and we'll get you on a list, and you can have it for a month or two, and then see whether it's a good fit and a good investment. And the same with mobile card readers. We have those that you can put into your phone and your iPad, pass them around with the giving plate if you're adventurous, or just have them at different events. And so those are really easy, and there's a very simple web app that goes with those. So we have quite a number of those that we can lend out. And also the opportunity for texting. If you're not quite sure you're ready to set it up, we could set up a texting possibility for your church, and you can test it out. And then if that works, you can go your own way. So lots of opportunity for you to just call us, and we'll set you up, and you don't have to do a lot of the upfront work. Other things that we're willing to do, certainly take a look at your website if you want us to look at that and make suggestions about how we can make that more user-friendly. We also have a new exciting opportunity coming up, the Colorado Gives Day. I think many of you know that that's the day that people in Colorado, it's December 4th this coming year, that people go online and they give to nonprofits around the state, to their favorite nonprofits. And up to this point in time, really it hasn't been an opportunity for most of our parishes. Right now, we've set that up so that your parish can participate in Colorado Gives Day, and when they're giving to all those other nonprofits, you can say, hey, give to our parish, and 100% of those giving, less the fees, of course, the credit card fees, will go back to the parishes. So we'll be setting more information around Colorado Gives Day, but that'll be a great opportunity here. Lots of other software and discounts too, that if you're interested, certainly Prospect Research, if you want to kind of just get a picture of the wealth giving possibilities within your church, we can run that through our databases. There's certain discounts that we'll be offering through Vanco and School Network Stewardship, things like that, and software discounts. And also, as in the future goes forward, we may be able to negotiate other opportunities for different software companies. So if there's other things that you need, or services, or things that you think, boy, I wonder if the diocese could help us with that, give us a call or an email, and we'll do what we can.
Okay, the last thing I want to say about getting started today is get started today. Please do something. And the best possible thing that you can do is to create a stewardship committee. Get somebody in charge of that, hand them the responsibility, and beg and plead to do something today. Now, to help your stewardship committee, we have a whole lot of resources on our website, church-development.com, where we will give them agendas, checklists, calendars, books, articles, samples from other churches, training videos to equip a stewardship committee to be a success. So step number one, get a stewardship committee and get them moving today. Once they're up and going, then the next bullet, add giving options to your website with links. Allow them the freedom that they want. Clearly, they want to give electronically. Set up electronic fund transfer direct online. You can even have an option for legacy giving. Now, I think in a moment we're going to shift to the Holy Comforter example.
I think I'll do that here, and I know we're a little bit over time, but if you guys can bear with us for a few more minutes, we're getting close to the end, and then we have a number of questions we'd also like to take.
Fire away.
As I told you, I was poking around people's websites, and I came across Holy Comforter Broomfield's website, which has done a really great job of listing multiple ways to give on their website, and I'm just going to take you there. So from their homepage, you get directed here through a give menu item. They talk about ways to give to partners in ministry. They talk about their capital campaign, and then how to give legacy gifts. And this is all scrolling down that same page. You can give by credit card online. You can do recurring gifts to pay your pledges. You can text to give. You can, of course, pay by cash or check. You can sign up for Amazon Smile to allow 0.5% of your purchases to go back to Holy Comforter. I would actually recommend doing grocery gift cards, which give a 5%, kickback, and that's something you could offer on your website as well. They talk about stock transfers, employer matching funds, and the legacy ministry there at Holy Comforter. After setting up your website, I would really encourage you to either pick Text to Give or to use a mobile app to offer giving by phone, which, as you know, everybody has with them. They sometimes even go off during services. Do that as a priority. Dennis talked about the Stewardship Committee. Some of you might not know that this coming Sunday is Social Media Sunday. This is a day that you can encourage your parishioners to have their phones with them, to take selfies and group shots and pictures of the campus, and to put those with some text online and do a bit of evangelizing through social media. Since you're already asking them to have their cell phone, it's a great time to introduce Text to Give or an online giving app. And then this last one, I've been thinking a lot about this because my husband and I give by electronic funds transfer. And when the plate gets passed every Sunday, I always feel like, oh, I want to put something in it, but I gave online or I gave through EFT. And I feel like I'm missing out on that piece of the service. And so I was thinking about ways that people could still contribute. And I found an electronic giving card online that I thought was pretty clever. These would be cards that you would have at your church that would say, I made my gift online, or I gave my gift through electronic funds transfer. And then you just add that to the plate as it's passing by, so then it's carried up and blessed at the altar along with the other things in the plate. I also love the idea of a Thanksgiving card, where you could have cards in the pews where people could write their Thanksgivings down, whether they had already given or not. And that way they could, just be thinking of ways they're grateful, and then have those brought forward to be blessed with the other gifts. So those are two ways to help people participate who are giving online, to help them participate in the offertory. And the final thing I wanted to show you was one of the examples I found. This was from St. Anne's Church in Ankeny, Iowa. And this is a card that they keep at their church that people can add to the plate.
So just a quick lead in, and then we'll get to the few questions that are out there. But just as a summary, the key things I think takeaways from today is we need to think creatively about how to really accommodate all our donors, especially the Gen X and millennial donors that just don't carry cash and give in a new way. And it's also important to really get to know your congregation. Certain congregations may not be quite ready for some of the, for having a kiosk in the back, and knowing the various incomes and the fact that you're a seasonal church, with people coming in summer or winter and not so much in mud season. And also get to know the passions, because if you can really follow the passions and talk about, and meet those passions of your congregation, that's going to be a big help as far as giving. So the more opportunities and ways you can do is just great, and not just for money, but for skills and talents, and the more you can get people to enter into using their gifts, whatever they may be, is what's going to make the church and your ministry vibrant. And finally, just recognize that that today there's so much competition. I hate to use that word, but it's true in the nonprofit sector, and that's why we need to be there on Colorado Gives Day and places like that, because people do believe in their causes and nonprofits, and so the more we can recognize that our ministry needs to be in there with the rest of the nonprofit sector, but in our own special and of course spiritual as disciples of Christ. So I think that's basically it. We do have a couple questions that we want to just touch base briefly with. One from Lisa talked about how long a kiosk swipe takes. It's very quick. Dennis, you can jump in here if you see it differently, but basically you swipe and that gathers all your information, so there's no punching in. And then it's just a matter of choosing a few options as far as amount and particular funds, depending on how it's set up. So it's a fairly quick.
Right, under a minute for sure.
Yeah, so it's very quick. Actually, in some ways, from that initial text one, it might even be quicker than that. Carl talked about Colorado Gives Day. Whoops, sorry about that. Still learning to drive here, trying to see the rest of the questions. As far as setting it up, we'll walk you through that process. It's really simple. You can just have them go to Colorado Gives Day and type in Episcopal Diocese or Colorado Diocese. It'll be the first thing that shows up, and you can go through and they can just note the diocese, so St. Gabriel's or whatever. So that's really quick. But there's also a way to set up your own fundraising page, which is a little bit more involved, but again, probably would take about 5-10 minutes. And that way you have your own targeted page with your picture of your church or several pictures and a video you can put on it. So you can really accommodate it and specialize it and brand it for your own church. I would certainly recommend that. You don't have to, but it's something that you can do and do very quickly. And then the final question here was really about a question for Dennis, really, I think, that as far as the electronic discussion, as part of your stewardship, is it better to target towards a finite objective? So, for example, 50% of parishioners tithing on average, or a 25% increase year to year. So how do you know when you're kind of done or when you've achieved your objectives? What would you recommend, Dennis, as far as really creating targets for your stewardship?
That's really such a good question. How do we meaningfully measure progress? And we have the biblical invitation of giving 10%. Now, if we were to hit that, where every member of your church was a tither, your income would be exactly 10 times what it is today. Isn't that interesting? 10 times. So the way you get there is where the average person is giving 2%. You have half your people that give little and next to nothing. So of those who give, if they multiply times 5, and the other people step from very modest to 10%. So we have a long way to go. The way I always look at setting goals is incremental increases. I've been through our stewardship system many times with many churches, and our target is always a 10% increase in funds received. That is our bottom line, the dollar. We want to do that every single year, and most years we do that. Most years we are able to get that. You know, Paul, at some time in the future, we should have an annual campaign webinar where we can give the really super specific tactics, like how do you design a pledge card to maximize response rates. We should also have a webinar about planned giving to encourage people to remember the church and their estate plans. But your questioner asked a really good question, and I would like to reduce it to its most simple definition, and that is increasing our dollars by 10% per year. Now, the more nuanced would be we want more people giving. A more nuanced would be we want more people pledging. And so the simplest one is 10%, and a more complex one would take into account each category. Your non-givers, you give who don't pledge, and your pledgers. And then how do we increase their participation in the stewardship process?
Great.
It's a good subject for another webinar.
Yeah, I think so.
I do that. So thanks so much, Dennis.
All right, so this was our third of 4 webinars. Next Thursday at the same time, noon, we will meet again for our final webinar of the season called Year-Round Engaged Stewardship. We're going to talk about what it is and why it's important to you and how you can begin to implement it in your church. So it might sound a little mysterious right now, but hopefully that will encourage you to sign up. I'll be sending out the link to all of you for next week, as well as the recording of today's webinar, so you can share with others.
And
Thank you.
our guest for that one will be Mike Green, no relation to Dennis, but he's done a lot of work for the National Church around asset-based community development and really engaging both parishioners and community. So he'll be joining us next week.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dennis.
You bet.
Being with us today, and we'll hopefully see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.